And welcome to another episode of Beam Bites. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Samuel Hawkins, entrepreneur in the Dallas Fort Worth area, as well as a pastor. And of course, we have our lovely co host, founder, and CEO of Beam Education. How's everybody doing this afternoon?
Very
Doing
well.
exceptionally well.
Very
Very
good.
good, very good. Mr. Hawkins, we asked you to join us on the show today to one talk about your entrepreneurial experience in the DFW area. So tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial forays in the Dallas Fort Worth area, sir.
Um, I've been in business doing what I do for approximately about 40 years or more. Um, Started out very young doing it. Was trained by my father. My father was an entrepreneur himself. He owned his own business for 27 years, and I just kind of followed in his footsteps and continued to enjoy serving people in the capacity in which he taught me so well.
And what business was that you and your dad are in? And talk a little bit about the service that you have in the community as both of you guys being pastors as well.
Well, my dad was a licensed landscaper for 27 years. So,
Okay.
so that particular work required a lot of physical activity, and it was hard work. It wasn't something that I wanted to continue in, but it gave me the groundwork to know how to handle money. He taught me how to deal with customers, how to promote and how to sell yourself, how to gain the trust of individuals that you're going to be servicing, and making sure that the work that you done are doing was quality work, that it was not, you wasn't just after a paycheck. You actually was enjoying and wanted to do what it is that you was doing. And he taught me those things, and I transferred those over to the present day business that I continue to operate in a different capacity, and it works well. Works well.
Dr. Nelson, join in with the discussion with us. Let's talk a little bit about how Beam is working to create entrepreneurs like Mr. Hawkins and how he got to where he is through the educational system that he had at the time.
Well, I think Mr. Hawkins identified some key elements that I think that are currently missing from the educational programs that we offer children today. He specifically talked about learning how to deal with other individuals, which is a 21st century skill of learning how to collaborate and problem solve with others. He also talked about the ability his father's business and him being a part of his father's business allowed him to really learn about how to use money in ways that were effective to save and to expand the business. And as we think about education in the 21st century and what we are teaching children today, there are some things that are truly missing that are going to support them as they inherit what we're already in, which is the 21st century. And so the thing that Beam Micro School Academy wants to do is to change how education is used and what it looks like when children walk into a school to learn. And so, because the whole thing is about an education is supposed to, one, provide you the opportunity to be a lifelong learner, and two, you should be a contributor and a productive citizen to the community that you live in. And I'm not sure that that is what we're creating, especially in a post-pandemic world at this particular time.
And we talked about a post pandemic world, but we're all of the generation of post segregation education. Mr. Hawkins, kind of talk to us about your experience and your dad's experience in the education field coming out of that post-educational segregation time period, and how that affected your family and your education coming up.
Well, my dad was not a graduate. Um, my dad, my dad was one of 27 in his family.
Ooh.
So my father, at that point, he was the youngest boy, and he was nurtured by my uncle, which my uncle today, he is yet alive. My father's passed away in 2014, but my uncle, he's 90 years old, and he ran a successful business for the majority of his life, and he's still today. I mean, he gives me the blues because he is still every morning getting up, seeing what it is that he can now do or create, or however he is busy. He's not at 90, and I'm trying to keep up with him. But my father learned from my uncle how to deal in business. One of the things in which, so educational wise, it wasn't on the back of the education that came to the school. It was being educated through family and through those who were doing the work and brought them in. The next thing, myself, I am a graduate. I went to 9 tech schools. I was ASC certified, um, and did all of those things to educate myself in the field of automotive, um, to the point to where I made sure that I perfected what I wanted to do and made sure that I was qualified to do it, irregardless of what I may have been facing. And so, with that being said, one of the things in which my father he gave me a skill. I believe one thing that we're facing right now in our modern day society is the majority of our children have no skill. They need a skill. I mean, I believe that if I needed to, I could go back and do landscaping. Why? Because my father gave me a skill that no matter where I went in the world, I could get paid. I gave my sons the same skill through automotive. No matter where they go in the world, I don't care what country, I don't care what city, I don't care what state, they can make money because they know how to do repairs on vehicles, and vehicles are everywhere. That's a skill. My middle son, he's in music. I said, son, if you learn how to play your instruments and those things, that's a skill. That's something that is transferable across the board in any place that you go. There's always opportunities. You can make money. I mean, go to New Orleans. Those kids down there on the street making music and on Bourbon Street, they get paid, irregardless of whether it's $3 here, $3, $1, $1.50. But at the end of the day, at the end of the night, depending on how many hours they spend out there, they collect the amount of money, and they do it 7 days a week. So that's a skill to be able to, that someone else will pay to get. Now, educational wise, yes, I perfected those areas in trying to make sure that I was well rounded and knowledgeable of whatever it is that I was doing. And I still am in school today. All of the new tech and all of the new vehicles that are coming out, you have to stay current with these things. You have to stay current with the latest technology that is coming out. Otherwise, you'll be limited to where you can and cannot go. There's no one ride, but I believe there is some grounded principles that is needed in any area. And even this year we're working toward starting a school ourselves, and teaching beginners in automotive, as well as doing an advanced class. We're working on a grant to try and get this done and kind of get it set up. And we're gonna mold it through our churches, because we have several young people that do attend church. We can catch. I mean, if you really can catch a young person at 7, 8, and get them interested in something that can benefit them the rest of their life, even if it's not the field that they go into, it is always good to have it as a skill, have it in, have it a part of your belt, as my father would say, a part of your, something that you can do. And, but our children right now, it's almost as though they're handicapped sometimes because they
Dr. Definitely. Dr. Nelson, let's talk about the partnership between families, education, and our religious structure in our community, because at one time there was a great partnership between all three of those. When there was times of segregation and we were educating our own kids, we were educating them not only through the church, but also through the school system, that the segregated Black school system as well. So let's kind of talk about the benefits that we had when we had that great partnership between the churches, the school systems, and the families, and how we've kind of lost that and gotten away from that. It seems like nowadays, so many parents feel like it's only the school's job to educate their kids, and they drop them off there and don't want to be involved.
Well, first of all, we have to think about the church in the sense of historically what we did as individuals, because we were left out of so many opportunities because of laws, because of segregation, and because of racism. And so when you really think about the movement of what we were able to create and give to our kids in that nuclear cycle or circle of the family, the church, and education, we lost some of that when in 1954, the desegregation of schools, which meant that the whole country started moving towards desegregation. But the one thing my grandmother said, because she was a teacher, she said, we lost a lot when we decided to desegregate, because our kids lost a sense of who they were, specifically in the communities, because at that point, because we could only live in certain communities, those communities had the doctors, the lawyers, the teachers, the mechanics, and all of us were in that same circle of influence. And we lost those influences when desegregation came about and people were able to move about into other communities. But I think what we are starting to recognize and see is the fact that when we come together as a united group in front, we can accomplish more. Because my grandmother told me at one point, because she was also an educator, she said, when we desegregated schools, we lost a lot. Our children lost the opportunity to see individuals who looked like them, who were successful and able to create. They also lost a teacher who cared about them, because 80% of the population who teaches children today are of a different race. And so therefore, you have to think about, what do our children see when they go to school? And they're not seeing individuals who look like them, who understand their culture, who understand the simple thing of how we know how to code switch when we're with our families. All of those become those pieces that ground us. And the church was a part of that. Let's go back to just thinking about, it was the church, it was the Black community, not big organizations, not companies, that started the civil rights movement. And so I think that one thing that we're going to have to do is go back to a grassroots movement where we support our children having a deeper understanding of who they are. And also they have to have a deeper understanding of who they can become, and not just dependent upon the images that America will want us to see that makes us think that we're less, because it becomes very vital and very important for understand if we are given the opportunity, we are able to accomplish anything that we put our minds to. As Reverend Hawkins just talked about, we have to come back together and produce those places of education that support our children learning what they need to know to be productive in the 21st century.
Great. Doctor, Pastor Hawkins, would you like to add to that?
Well, like Dr. Nelson was saying, it is very important that we do get back to the structure and to the blended communities and connected communities through the church as well as through the family, because we should not be just relying on schools to educate our children. I mean, education should be happening around you at all times. Whether it's in the home or whether it's at church or whether it's doing family functions or I try to educate. Everything needs to be about education. You should be learning 24/7. That's the rule of the game. We keep trying to shut it off. We keep trying to say, okay, once you achieve this level, you're where you need to be. Once you achieve this level, I believe that's a misconception. I believe that we have to be understanding that even at 90, as my uncle is, he is still educating himself and he is still being educated in different areas so that he can continue to contend with the society in which he lives in. True enough, yes, when we began to do what we done many years ago and start to pull ourselves out or starting to desire to be somewhere that didn't want us. Let's be honest, and when we start wanting what someone else has, and it was not beneficial for us, it was not created for us. But we had a particular life that was structured, it was safe, it was rewarding. Sunday dinner was great back in the day in the Black homes. We don't have that anymore. I remember my mom was a stay-at-home mom. I never knew, it wasn't until all of the children was grown and we all moved out that my mom started to even go back into doing the field in which she was educated in and that she had went to school for, and that was cosmetology. And she would do hair for the young women and different women throughout our community. They would come by the house, and I know she would do the pressing of their hair and those things, curling. And she was an entrepreneur, but she was a stay-at-home mom at the same time. She juggled both at the same time. My father, he's doing his, but at the day she would, there was dinners that was cooked on Sundays. There was things in which we all would come together. And even while we were sitting at the table, as the word of God says, he tells Moses, he says, when the children are sitting at the table, he says, teach them. He says, educate them. He says, talk about what I've done, what I'm doing. There was a sense of spirituality. And I won't say religion. I'll say there was a sense of spirituality at the table, because we knew that even though we were at the strength or we did what we did, we believed that the Lord was the one that was giving us the strength to do it. And we had a faith. We had a sense of faith. And it was instilled in children young. And when we got older, we started doing the same thing with our own children. But for some reason, somehow we started to break away because society began to tell us, well, you don't need this. Well, you're on your own. No, you don't need nobody. This word independence is one of the worst words I've heard in my life. It's not of the word of God. There's nowhere you can find the word independent in the Bible. It's nowhere in there. Throughout the whole book, it talks about the dependency on someone else, relying on someone else, seeing after someone else. We don't do that no more. I mean,
being of service to someone else, being of service to others.
You know, I mean, our children are suffering because they believe they have to do it on their own. That's a misconception. I mean, and when you equip someone with a philosophy that is already flawed, what you expect for them to get out of it, other than failure and disgust and fatigue, anger, because you told me something and what you told me didn't work. I got to do it on my own. I'm out here putting it down on my own. I ain't got nobody helping me. No, 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 no. Anybody that says that they made it where they are on their own, that person automatically don't believe nothing else they say, because they're lying. They are absolutely lying. There's no such thing as pulled yourself up by your own bootstraps. Someone help you up. Let's get real about it. And if you don't identify that.
How do we get back to that? It seems like other cultures, other races that have migrated here to the United States have stayed together as a family unit and a community.
Mm-hmm.
But yet ours has been torn apart. And like you said, so many of our young folks feel like they have to do it on their own. The families are divided. They're not in partnership with the school system. They're not in partnership with the church. So what's the solution? How do we get back to that?
Well, can I talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
The school that we're designing is meant to be an ecosystem, a community. Mm-hmm. Because as an educator for over 30 years, I've seen what happens when you don't let parents in the building. And I've seen what happens when you authentically let parents in and teach them how to teach their children. And so when you start thinking about what an ecosystem is, it's exactly what Pastor Hawkins just talked about. Is that interdependence upon each other to ensure that everyone is successful. Mm-hmm. So one of the main designs of Beam Micro School Academy is the fact that we are really looking to serve families and not schools intaking children, but instead we're truly serving families so that children have the ultimate school experience, educational experience, where they feel that inclusivity, where they feel like I know exactly where I am and where I need to go. And that is done through a lot of structures and systems and frameworks that we have put in place that we'll be talking about tomorrow night during one of our information sessions. And so when you start thinking about that inclusivity that we're looking for, that makes individuals not feel like they're lost, like they cannot accomplish, we want to change those by putting kids and parents in an environment that supports them being parents, that supports their children becoming scholars, but offers opportunity not to make everybody cookie cutter, but to truly see individuals as who they are, as magnificently and wonderfully made, as Jeremiah 29:11 says within the scripture. And so we are moving into a direction of that we provide support to both the child in finding out exactly where they have challenges and also finding out where their strengths are. Because a lot of times I think we focus so much on working on a weakness, we don't build children up on their strengths, because it is those strengths that help them grow and provide interest into them wanting to learn more and to be more. And so I think that is another way that we can bring that inclusivity and that personalized and customized learning back into the process, is by changing and shaping what a 21st century school would look like.
Yeah, I agree, Dr. Nelson, that we have to. Let's do the math, okay? My people, my father used to always say it has to add up. Math has the math. So let's do the math in our society and our culture, in the African American people. Why did they get away from what they had working so well, and that and our children were a lot more self-aware. They were a lot more uh, ambitious in trying to in different fields, not just in one, whether it was going to be education, whether it was going to be um, uh, landscaping, or whether it was going to be cosmetology, or whether it was going to be automotive, or whether it was going to be in law, or whether it was going to be in medicine. But I believe that our families and our parents then made us to not see any of those fields as being less than another. My father was a proud man that did automotive, and he worked for some of the most influential people in Dallas. I mean, and throughout the surrounding cities of Dallas. I mean, he did several of the mayors and pro ball players' homes. I mean, we got to meet people that were in different fields, and those people respected my father. And to see that as a child, that my father knew some important personalities that I would see on the television screen, and I'll be like, wow, my dad has to be somebody, to know these people. But even though the field in which he was in, it brought him into different places that allowed him to now to allow him to give us an opportunity to know that it doesn't matter where you are educationally wise, you still have the ability to affect people on a higher scale. There was a sense of pride. There was a powerful sense of being not prideful but proud of what you had accomplished, and that's what they would instill in their children. Regardless, I mean, you didn't have to. My mom, she did what she did, but she made my sister be proud of whatever it was that she went into. And so when it comes to our children, we have to be able to make them not feel as though whatever they're choosing or whatever field they're choosing to get into or pursue, as though it's not up here where I need you to be. No. I believe you have to see their capabilities, know their interests, and then pursue it with them. Be right there by their side. And so the school that you're speaking of, Beam, I believe, that is important. I like what you said. It is getting parents involved. 90% of our parents that are the children that we have right now, 90% of those parents are dropouts. But the fact of the matter is that their homes was dysfunctional. Even if they were dropouts, and I don't say dropouts in a negative way. I've seen people that didn't graduate. I mean, when you read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, when you read that book, you'll see that it's not about how far you go in the educational system. That's not it. It's how well you understand what you're doing and how to do it, and how well you are consuming from those who have done it. 90% of those parents, they're still trying to figure their own stuff out. So how is it that they're able to now teach a child? That's something that we have to help with. And that's doing that at the school, bringing those parents in, teaching them how to, believe it or not, when you're teaching the parent how to help the child with their work, you're actually teaching the parent some things they don't even know. But they too prideful to ask. So you're helping both hands. You're educating at the same time. And it's necessary because young men and young women.
There was a key point that he talked about, that when we talk about ecosystems and interdependence, because a lot of times we get caught up in degrees.
Yeah.
And the one thing that my parents, even though I'm third generation college grad, fourth generation college grad, but the one thing that the conversation that we had with my brother last week when we interviewed him that he discussed was the fact that both my paternal and my maternal grandfathers were entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
And so, because they had to figure out, how am I going to take care of this family in a way
Right.
that keeps me in a respectful manner, that keeps me from not being a victim of the system? And they were able to do that. And
Right.
so when I hear you're talking about landscape and cosmetology and auto mechanics, what we fail to realize a lot of times in the world is it takes all of us to support all of us.
Absolutely.
Meaning that I'm an educator. So if I have problems with my plumbing, we're in trouble because I can't do that. And so therefore, there is not one job that should take over the advantages of another job, because we need all of those different workers doing all of those different things that makes us be comfortable in the lives that we're living.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with that, Dr. Nelson, because when we start to get to the place where we start to lesser one's lesser one over another and make that person feel as though, you know, they are beneath. And listen, people, the field in which I'm in, you know, and I did it for almost 35 years before I retired. And then when I retired, the people that I was doing work for said, "No, we don't want you to retire. You know, we want you to continue." So I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I started doing it mobily. I started going to them, but at the end of the day, I said to my sons, and I taught my sons that doing what we're doing, we have to make sure that we do it on a level that people will appreciate. And we have to learn how to serve other people. We have to know that our whole life is about serving people. At the end of the day, however many, let me say it this way, a person that solves problems will always be a person in demand. Learn how to solve problems and learn whatever field that you solve problems in, perfect it, and I guarantee you can set your own price on how you want to be paid. Because
So one of the big keys I'm hearing here is the work ethic that you gain from your family, from your parents. And whether you pursue that to getting a doctorate or a PhD or becoming a certified mechanic or a pastor, it's a matter of being the best that you can be, raising the standard to one that would make your family proud, would make your community proud, that would make you proud of the service that you're providing for somebody else, right?
Right.
Okay,
I tell my sons, listen, and people ask me all the time, you know, how do I have a degree? I says, listen, I have 5 degrees. Both my sons, 2 of my sons have master's degrees. One have a bachelor degree. My wife has a bachelor and a master's degree. So all these individuals have degrees. And so they say, well, did you graduate college? Did you go to college? Yeah, I went to some college, but I didn't graduate. I says, but if you look at every one of those degrees, my name is on it. My name is on it. And every time they ran into their situation, guess what? I remember sitting up with my son, helping him with his economics class. And he was asking me questions, and I was like, you don't know the answer to that? You know, but I didn't have to sit in the classroom to learn the answer to it. Some of it was from the experience that I had now been able to be around people that actually would talk about the things in which they did. Even though my field takes me into the houses and into the presence of people at all levels. I mean, from the ground up to the top, you know, to presidents of companies. And those individuals, believe it or not, they don't mind speaking with somebody that they're entrusting to be at their home. So they'll share different things with you, and how well you learn, how well you listen, how well you consume. You're being educated every day. I mean, I get educated every day. So every time, when people ask me about my degrees, I have 5 degrees. I mean, do you see my name on the end of every one of these degrees? Do you think they got these degrees on their own? When my wife was going to college, I was supporting her to go to college and helping her with her homework. When my oldest son went to college and he then came home, he was the same way. My middle son, same thing. My youngest son, same thing. All of them got degrees. And so whether I was in, irregardless of the role in which I was in, I still learned, but also I taught at the same time. But some of the most rewarding education that they learned was right here at the house.
Exactly.
How to manage money. I asked the question in my students when I was doing a young people's class at our church. And here's the thing I would ask them. I says, here's my question. If you're chasing something, then what does that mean? And many would give me different responses, but the answer to that question is that it's running from you. I said, so whenever you're chasing something and it's running from you, it's either one or two things. One, it doesn't trust you, or two, it don't believe you know how to handle it. I says, when people chase money, when they chase different things, they chase them. But the truth of the matter is, if you know how to make those things come to you, and there's a way to make those things come to you. I don't chase money. Matter of fact, I don't work. It's what I've come to the conclusion of, that I don't work for money. I set my price, but yes, I don't work for the money because I don't do it for the money. There's many times that I will do work for individuals and not charge them nowhere close to what it would normally cost. Why? Because I'm working and I'm starting to use what the platform that I have or the skills that I have to now really be an impact in people's life, sometime at their weakest and lowest moments. That's what we have to do throughout every part. Dr. Nelson, that's what you're doing through Beam. You're helping people at their lowest points. You're helping them to give them an open door, helping them to now achieve things in which they thought may not be achievable and probably wouldn't be through the regular means and avenues that are there. Our government is in an uproar right now. I mean, we have craziness going on every side, but at the end of the day, I know that the Lord is going to see us through. And those that don't live by faith or don't live in a sense of spirituality, those individuals eventually will come there. I mean, you don't have to make a person seek out God, because God don't chase us. He brings us to him.
Dr. Nelson,
Yeah.
let's talk about how we make learning fun again for our kids in our community, and how do we instill upon them that learning is a lifelong, pleasurable journey, not something just to get past the next test.
Yeah.
That's where we are right now.
Yeah.
It's like, I just published an article on LinkedIn yesterday on children loving to read, because as a kid, it was everyday stop for me to stop at the library as I walked home from school. And kids have so many distractions that stop them from loving things like reading and just being very curious. And so when we stop kids' curiosity and the authenticity of learning, we are jeopardizing a whole group of people to not want to learn. And so with Beam Micro School, the way the school is going to be set up or will be set up is, number one, and just because we didn't say it, we always say Beam Micro School Academy, but we never say what Beam stands for. Beam stands for Building Entrepreneurs Academically and Mindfully. Because when you think about the fact that in a lot of cases, what we're teaching in school does not support children having resilience and grit and problem solving and critical thinking and application of the work that we have to do. And so what Beam is going to do is that, number one, kids don't come to school at the same time. There are two very distinct times that children will come to school. They will come to school either at 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And during that 2 hours, if you were a student that was coming in at 8 o'clock and you have that specific time that is designed specifically just for you as a child, during that time, during those 2 hours before the next set of children come in, what those children are exposed to is something that has been developed specifically for them called a personalized education portfolio, which totally outlines where their challenges lie. Like if you were a student, as I was a child who had a lot of issues on math, where during that time, if I had the pro power session, that time would have been spent on my area of weakness, which was math, and ensuring that I really had a total understanding of those concepts in math that drove me crazy. Once that is done, the next part of that session is that we then work on what I was good at, which was reading, science, social studies. So now that child is being exposed, as well as their confidence is being uplifted, so that they're able to now not only work on their weaknesses, but they're also working on their strengths. Then we move into that same hour of previewing work that they will be doing in the upcoming weeks, so they're not cold when they see it for the first time. Once all of that is done, they are coached about what their goals are for the next week or 2 weeks. And then they are coached to really think about, how am I going to accomplish what we just wrote down in my personalized education portfolio? Right. So then we move into the next cluster group coming in at 10 o'clock. That same activity, that same probe and power session is done with them at the end of the day. When the other students leave, we do that with them from 3 to 5. Now, from Monday through Thursday, the children are totally involved, taking all of those skills that they learn and using problem-based, project-based learning, so that they are learning in a way that they have to apply everything that they have to learn. So Monday through Thursday is meant for project-based learning and to really hone in on what they're strong at with their skills. But on Fridays, what happens on Friday is lab day. And lab day stands for learning, ability, and building. On those days, they have to take everything that they work for during the week, and now they have to apply it somewhere. And so they will be taking courses around environmental stewardship, digital technology, and ethics, because think about it. Our kids have to know AI, but it's not good enough for our students to know AI and how to use it. We want them to be able to build AI programming. We want them to be able to do robotics. We want them to be able to do coding. And so they will be doing all of those different kind of things. They will also be able to take a mass communication class where they're designing web programs. And I want you to see the connection of what happens when you're doing digital technology, but then you're adding mass communication to that. And then another course that they will be taking is global citizenship. The one thing that the technology has done is they have flattened the world. And because the world is flattened, I could talk to someone in Indonesia right now, and we would be in a whole different time shift. But have we exposed our children to the opportunities that the 21st century offers? And the children who will be most left behind are the children who look most like me. And so all of those activities changes the structure because kids get the opportunity to work with each other. They have hands-on experiences of working with real, authentic situations, circumstances, and problems that we as adults have to deal with every day, but it's done in such a way that is set up in a structure called a school. Because what we forget sometimes, as Reverend Hawkins brought out, learning should be going on everywhere, not just in the place, quote, we call school. It should go on everywhere. So those are some of the unique principles, concepts, and ideas that will be offered at Beam Micro School Academy, which stands for Building Entrepreneurs Academically and Mindfully. And so the last point that I want to make about that is the fact that just because your child would enroll into Beam Micro School Academy and it's for entrepreneurs does not mean that they're going to be an entrepreneur. The only way I could have really become Dr. Nelson was having the determination. Do entrepreneurs have to have determination? Yes. The other thing is I had to have resilience, because that was a 4-year program. I ended up having to write a book. So if I was not able to do all those things, I wouldn't have had the determination. So entrepreneurship not only teaches people about business, but it gives them a skill set that makes them be able to thrive in the world that they have to live in.
Right.
Excellent. Pastor Hawkins, talk a little bit about the big family that you came from. You know, you said your grandfather was one of how many kids?
My father was one of 27.
Okay. So that is a unique situation that
Same
none of
mother.
us here, none of us here besides yourself can talk about. But talk about that situation, because you know, in our community, most families don't have that many kids unless they're Catholic or something like that.
I think the dynamic back then was totally different. You know, my uncle and I, we would ride, and he would share with me about where they grew up, and my dad would do the same, and how the family structure was designed. And there was 3 sets of twins, 2 sets of triplets, and then 13 of the children remained out of the 27. Some of them passed away at birth. But the family structure back then, it was more so about not so many the amount of mouths that you had, but how many hands that you had in order for the family, because many was picking cotton, they were picking peas, they were doing field work. And so the family structure was different, because, you know, if you didn't have enough people in your household, there was a problem that you would not be able to earn enough in the fields when the time came. And so many of them had several children, you know, families of 10, families of 12, families of 15. My grandmother and grandfather just happened to have 27. My when I would listen to the stories, one of the stories in which my uncle told me about when my dad was brought home, he says, I didn't even know I had a brother. He says, until mama came in there and said, this is your brother. And she put him in my arms. He says, I think I was about 13 at that time. And he says, I made it to 3rd grade. He says, I didn't go past the 3rd grade. He says, I had to leave school in order to take care of my brothers. And he says, and so I took care of him. I took care of my sister, you know, because there was different segments of those children in that 27. And so they were given responsibility to see after their siblings. And my uncle said, you know, he took care of my dad, my other uncle, and all of them, you know, he taught them skills in the field. He taught them skills in hunting. He taught them skills in fishing. He taught them skills in different things in which they could survive, to teaching them how to survive. And but always teaching them this skill, and that was to always be honest in what you're doing. Always be mindful that if you take from somebody else that don't belong to you, and take it from them, that possibly could happen to you as well, the same way. So I mean, but that family dynamic was huge, and so we had a lot of aunts and a lot of uncles, and now today, I think my uncle, I think out of the 27, there's only 3 that are still remain alive, and that's why I be that's why I take care of my uncle so well. I mean, if he calls, I'm gonna answer. If he needs me, I'm showing up. But I taught the same thing in my children. You know, hey, when my granddaughter was first born, I told my wife, I says, um, let's do something for them that was done for us. I says, for the first year, we will take care of our grandchild for the first year. They won't go to a daycare. They need to know us. They need to know the family. They need to know about family. I know everybody can't do that, but I was in a position that we could do that. And when my second grandchild was born, we did the same thing for a whole year. They didn't go to a daycare or those things. They came to a family. They was raised with the um, with the infrastructure of what our family represent, and helping them to be proud of being a part of the family, getting to know um, different individuals and be comfortable around them, so that we could keep our family knitted, and mindful of one another. It's important, but that's not happening these days. I know everybody's not in that ideal position where they can say, well, let's just let's take off for a year and help raise our grandchild. No, I know everybody can't do that, but we have been blessed to be able to do that. And so my sons, when they were growing up, they didn't go to a daycare. My wife was at home, or they went to work with me every day, whether they was in diapers or whether they was just learning to walk. I had them in that place of business, learning about money, learning about repairing, learning about customer service, learning about. Listen, we have to start earlier educating our children again. And I know it's not ideal for everyone to be in that same position, but um, there's a lot of at home businesses that are happening that parents are not even including their children in. You're doing business at home. Why not include that child? Make it fun. I mean, yeah, some of it has to be um, purpose and um, and structured, but still you can make it fun. At the end of the day, you can have a lot of fun doing it. So yeah.
All right. Good, good. As we get ready to close out the show, I'd like to first, Dr. Nelson, talk to you or have you respond first on how can we get back to getting families involved back with the educational structure, as well as getting the church back involved with the educational structure as well. How can we get back to that balanced triangle of learning and caring that we once used to have that we're getting away from? Dr. Nelson?
Well, I think it starts with one step. There's a Chinese proverb that talks about a journey starts with one step. And if we're 25 years in the 21st century. And so we already know all of the mistakes that humanity has made. So in order to change that, we need to create more institutions that are going to look like Beam, where we not only want to ensure the education or that we're making money, but we also want to make sure that there is a sense of community, there's a sense of interdependence. And so I think, because the one thing that we did not talk through this whole discussion, which has been an excellent discussion on why we need to change and what were some of those principles that held us together previously with our other generations, is the fact that there is a true need for us to go back to those positive events that increased us in being able to grow and knowing who we are. So one thing about the Beam Micro School, it's not a 400 school where there's 400 students, which means that if I have 400 students, then I have possibly two parents that I have to deal with, or one parent. So that brings the number up to another 800. These schools that we are getting ready to open will only have 150, no more than 160 kids per school that we open up. And we will always control the quality of what is going on so that we ensure that everyone feels like they belong in that environment, especially the children and especially the families. Because I believe in order for us to turn around and remember that we are humans first, that it's going to have to start with these small steps into a 21st century that appreciates everyone, not just for their color of their skin, but who they are as humans once we strip away the color of our skin and really look at each other as being wonderfully and marvelously made. That's so important.
Great. Pastor Hawkins, talk about your involvement with your kids' education and their teachers and how you develop a partnership with them to help educate their children.
Through the church, we are working on making sure that there are available resources when they come. Um, you can't talk to someone about the love of God if that person that you're talking to is hungry. Jesus always met the physical need, then he dealt with the spiritual need. I believe it's very important that we have resources, whether it be food banks or whether it be clothing or whether it be necessary things in which young women, young men may need, children may need, families may need, and provide those things. And then as you are creating a relationship with that parent or with those children through meeting physical needs, then you have the opportunity to share with them a even deeper level of spirituality and the need to have Christ in their life. Um, it was how Jesus prepared every one of his parables that he taught. He taught meeting the physical need. Then a person is more open to be accepted to the spiritual guidance and the spiritual need that they have in their life. Um, this is important. Right now, our ministry, even I know it's not in this country, but we have a ministry even in Pakistan right now. We serve villages, several villages in that region, and we have a liaison there that we support and that we help with to make sure that the love of Christ is being distributed. But how do we do that? We do it first by meeting their physical needs. So we send food, we make sure food is available. And then when they come together, they will do a dinner. They will bring all the people from different villages together and they meet their physical needs. And then they turn around and tell them about the love of Christ and the love of Jesus. Well, this is how I believe is a format that we still have to do in the schools and in the churches and in this blending process that we have to get back to. We have to start meeting physical needs. There are physical needs that people have need of. And don't talk about you care about me and you see me without and you're doing nothing to help me. I believe it's important that we in tune make sure that we begin to meet the physical needs um, that can be met and that should be met. Um, um, we don't have any more neighbors like we used to have. You know, if you was without a cup of flour, you could go next door, and somebody next door or across the street had a cup of flour. You know, I can't tell you how many times I ran across the street to one of our neighbors' house to pick up some stuff for my mom, because my mom called and said, hey, I ain't been to the store yet, but I need a cup of sugar. Do you have some sugar? And she said, yeah, send him on over here. And I go get the cup of sugar and come back across the street. Well, meeting physical needs brings us into a greater relationship that will be more open and more acceptable to hearing about our spiritual needs that we have. And that's important for me. And that's something that I seek out to do and urge that we all try and do. The school has to meet those physical needs. Then it can help with those spiritual needs.
Excellent, excellent. As we close out today, Pastor Hawkins, please let our viewers know how they can get in contact with your ministry and your concierge services.
Our ministry is Mount Hebron Victor Faith Center Church. We're in the city of Terrell, Texas, 8628 County Road 301, Terrell, Texas 75160. You can also follow us on Facebook. We're located on Facebook. Our page is Mount Hebron Victory Faith Center Church on Facebook. We also have YouTube, but we also broadcast on 92.9 KGPJ radio program in Grand Prairie. So we have several avenues. We're on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 a.m. on our Facebook page. Also, Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. we do our midweek service online, and we're online every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. So you can follow us in those areas. If you want to, if there is a need that you may have concerning your vehicle, I still do these, but I only work by appointments only. I really haven't did any advertising for that goes because believe me, I only work 2 days out of a week, 2 to 3 days out of a week, and I'm like everybody else. I'm pretty choosy. so usually if you know somebody that is one of my clients and they give you my number, that's usually the way I get in touch with. Now, if you don't have those, you don't have that. I'm not seeking a whole lot of new people. I'm just being honest because I like going fishing, and I go fishing every week, and I don't want nothing interrupting my fishing because I've been blessed right now to enjoy fishing. So, but if you need some automotive repair, then you can reach any one of these individuals that are on the screen, and if you can reach out to them, then you can get in touch with me. How about that?
All right, Dr. Nelson, your closing words and your closing statements as we finish up for today.
It's been a very powerful hour because it takes us back to the roots of where we have all come from, which is our family. And I think until we teach our kids that they're standing on the shoulder of their ancestors, they will never understand the power of who they truly are. And so you just put up this slide that we created, and it specifically says the next generation of entrepreneurs begins at home. And as Reverend Hawkins has spoken today, it becomes very necessary and important that whatever we're doing, we also need to train our children, because Scripture tells us, train up a child in the way that they will go, and they will not depart.
Amen.
Amen. And thank you both for joining us. With that, we're going to end out with the slide. The next generation of entrepreneurs begins at home. So we're standing by to help you to continue the education that has started in your home. We want to bring them into our place of home and business to be able to continue the education accordingly. So thank you both so much for joining us today. And with that, we're signing out until next week. Thank you.